Welcome to the video, sorry. Good morning. Take two. Action. I have with me the DCP, Mr. Ford, and Superintendent Lucas from the FIB to deal with some of the matters that we'll be discussing this morning in our weekly media briefing. You would be aware that from tomorrow there was a statement whereby I'm supposed to be going on vacation for a month. We'll come to that at the end of the media conference. I would just like to clarify certain things as it pertains to what is known as the fake Gary news that has been going along. I just would like to clarify to the public, anything that you see on social media that is not from our official correspondence, please take it with a pinch of salt. There's an orchestrated plot to deliberately send false information to the public as it pertains to Gary Griffith. It reminds me, I know we'll be getting close into the parang season, but what I've seen now is some of these comments, I think they can make a parang song with it, lie, 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 because every single thing about it is just littered with lies. They continue to try to mislead the public and to deliberately cause mischief. You'd have seen certain things, if you look on the screen, where it stated that that PCA had recommended that Gary Griffith go on administrative leave. If people want to discredit Gary Griffith, at least do some research and do not sound foolish. The PCA does not and cannot and will not give administrative leave. That is not the rule of the PCA. They have no authority to do that. So that alone showed the mischief by, and it's a certain group and a specific individual who is orchestrating it, and she's been very well paid. So every single day you'll be seeing these lies. There have been others where it stated that I resigned, and that went viral around the country stating that I resigned. That never took place. Then you would have seen Facebook, again on Facebook, on the 482 Gary, notice what they put, my office hours are from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. You cannot put you can't superimpose a message onto WhatsApp. So all of this is the deliberate mischief that is being orchestrated by a certain group to, based on their being paid by certain elements, obviously to cause confusion. Any others, Francis? Then we would have seen a video put into Cambridge Analytica, and the video has my photograph about 7 times, where the Attorney General has confirmed by speaking to relevant individuals that at no time I had any conversation or contract or any involvement with Cambridge Analytica. So this has become the norm, where these individuals have a deliberate intention. It is obvious that there's a link with the criminal underworld, where they are trying their best to try to discredit and cause confusion as it pertains to the GG brand. It seems that the GG brand, the Gary Griffith brand, seems to be something that is of substance to some people. I think even Gucci uses it. I think Gucci probably used my brand. As it pertains to the more serious matter, so that's just to clarify to the public in future, anything you see with Gary Griffith, or you see the individuals or certain activists, certain individual, this is being a deliberate and orchestrated attempt to cause confusion. Please ignore it and take any correspondence, have it from someone who is authorized and not just taking fake news, and please take it for face value. As it pertains to domestic violence, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we wish to send most condolences to the Kashan family. Yet again, domestic violence will rear its ugly head. What we need to do is definitely not play the blame game and not to try to point fingers, but to find solutions. I think what we continue to see is that only when there's this heinous crime that it becomes something of substance and importance to many. The media will start to interview persons, recommendations will be made on the front pages of the newspapers, but we need more than that. It cannot be until an incident takes place that we all recognize how important this matter is and how serious it is. Domestic violence has increased worldwide because of, obviously, due to the COVID pandemic, where we have seen the concerns, and by doing that, it has proven to cause an increase in domestic violence. That must not be an excuse for us in Trinidad and Tobago to justify it. There is this perception that the police service, we can deal with it on our own. There's the possibility that man beats woman, woman reports it to the police lock a man for good, the woman is safe. In our criminal justice system, unfortunately, that does not happen. I am here to provide solutions and recommendations for us to move forward rather than trying to defend the police or blame anyone else. The fact of the matter is that what we do see is on many occasions with domestic violence, family, friends, employees, neighbors, they will all, you get it by the dozens after the fact, stating of how long this has been going on, how often they knew about it, but then when the police look at the reports, there's no report made by anyone. So everyone knows about this and they talk about it after the fact. It does not help. If you see something, say something. And then even the few occasions when it is reported, at times what we have seen is that the person will report it and not want to make an official statement. So they report it for information purposes and then say, well, I don't want any action taken on the individual. I ask all persons, especially women, if it is you have a situation, do not wait for it to reach a point of no return. And then there's the worst when it is even when the possible victim makes the report and makes a statement and the police act. The individual could get bail in 24 hours, and if the case takes a few years, he's still out there on the street. I have asked that we are doing the best that we can. Because of the formation of the gender-based violence unit, it has proven to be very effective to deal with such situations. I asked members of the public, I certainly cannot account and give confidence to say that each and every police officer will do their job perfectly. But if they don't, I ask you, please, it is that you make a report as it pertains to domestic violence, especially as it pertains to this situation. Please have a receipt. Please ensure that it has dealt with. Please demand that you have your report submitted to the gender-based violence unit and not just send it to a police station. In this present situation, we are seeing that there were no reports of domestic violence, there were no restraining orders, no protection orders. We want to help. We really want to be there. We want to provide some degree of support, but we need the information. Yes, so the individuals would have arrived and they were warned, they were advised, they were directed to the victim and witness support unit, which they agreed to. But what we asked for, I need information. And this comes from members of the public, family, friends. Help us to help you. We can't just continue every time someone has been killed, especially domestic violence. You keep hearing the comments. They told the police on numerous occasions. I immediately trigger a bell. My veins starts to pop. When I call the stations, we have no reports. So I would like to deal with any police officer, even in this situation, if someone could bring a receipt to show that they made a report of domestic violence in this matter, and I would deal with it. But we can't have the same as a regurgitation over and over after every incident of domestic violence. You hear that people claim that they sent numerous reports to the police, and when we look, there are no reports. Use 482, Gary, if it is that there's a degree of confidentiality, that if you're concerned, in contrast to the bacchanal gossip people who say that you only send messages at working hours. I do work 24 hours a day at times. Send it and we would look at it. Again, we want to help. We need to work together, the different agencies, the organizations, the police service. We are not perfect. We have made mistakes in the past as it pertains to domestic violence, which is why we have formed the gender-based violence unit, which is why I insisted that what we must do now is that we have found, even if victims are afraid to come forward, we can still work on it through the fact that when they are beaten or battered, they have to go for medical help through the private or the public sector. And I've insisted that there must be a law to make it mandatory that anyone in any public sector who has a report of someone being beaten, they must bring it forward to the police, to the attention of the police. That gives us that opportunity now to go after the perpetrator even without the evidence of the victim. So we are trying our best. If anyone could make recommendations to the police to improve our standard, we would do so. We are not here to defend ourselves. We are not here to blame anyone. We just want this to stop and to be reduced as much as possible. As I go on to the third point, and then this is where I will ask Mr. Lucas to give his input. As it pertains to the investigation pertaining to the DSS. Now, we have a situation here where for 2 years, the Trans-Ego Police Service, we've been doing almost all that we can. But what we keep hearing is that we're not going after the big fish. I would think that if it is, we have some system where it is possible that hundreds of millions of dollars in cash is being circulated around the country. You can't get a bigger fish than that. And this is not to point fingers at DSS. This may very well be certain persons who are using the system as the big fish to try to launder money, to be involved in washing funds, and by doing that, they are using this organization to commit their act. I think it is Trinidad and Tobago may be the only country in the world where the police will find $22 million in cash, and persons would object and say, well, I don't think you all should get involved and give the people back the money. We do not know. We need to make sure, based on possible tax evasion, money laundering, if this is a front that is used by criminal enterprise to try to transfer funds using DSS, that is what we are here for. So I am not here to point fingers at anyone, but definitely a situation such as this, there must be some degree of investigation. Many people want me to reduce crime. Many people want me to clean up the country, but what I have noticed is that they keep saying it, but they then say, but don't let it affect me. Well, then there must be something that would affect you. The concern that people state is that we are stopping poor people from getting money. But if you're a poor person in a poor family and you invest $5,000, let's say $10,000, and you get back $50,000, do you think it's just that the organization is based on them winning a lotto every time for you to get $40,000 in return? No. What it means is that 4 other poor families will be losing their $10,000 deposit. And if it is not through a pyramid scheme, it means that these persons are acquiring funds from some other means that you can't even account for. And that is why the police must get involved, because if it is used as a front towards money laundering or any aspect of criminal activity, that is our job. So it is not about witch hunting or going after the poor people. At times, the police service, we need to protect people from themselves, because we have seen worldwide where the pyramid scheme is something that is illegal. Because people will put their 10, get their 50, and then feel good and say, well, that is my right. But 4 other persons below that individual in the scheme would have put their 10,000 that caused you to get your 50, and now they will lose their 10 because there's no one below them to find 4 other persons. And then what happens is that all these individuals at the bottom of the pyramid will come to the same commissioner of police, just like the girl on the beach, and start crying, boo-hoo-hoo, they lost their money. And that is where it becomes a criminal offense. So at this time, we are trying our best to make sure to protect persons from themselves, but even if it is not a pyramid scheme, you cannot tell the police that, please, you find $22 million in the roof, in boxes, in cardboards under a bed, and we should not investigate. We recall just about a year or 2 ago, a minister had $140,000 in cash, $140,000, and this became national concern for the police to launch a major investigation. So you're saying that we must investigate $140,000 in cash and not $22 million in cash? So it is just for us to do an investigation to verify that everything that has been acquired, it is through legitimate means, that taxes are being paid, that the source of funds is accounted for, and that is all that we are doing. I give the assurance to the public as well that there are 2 other investigations ongoing. One as it pertains to the police officers who claim that they could have counted $22 million in cash within an hour or 2, and then claim that they would have seen the receipts and then give it back. I wish to inform the public that is impossible. There's no way that you could have counted $22 million on that time. There's no way you could verify that every single $100 in that $22 million would have been counterfeit or not. You were supposed to hand it over to the FIB, which is where Mr. Lucas will come in shortly. There's no way you could have ensured that the receipts were authentic. For example, if you have $22 million and 4 persons give a receipt for, say, $4 or $5 million, I will now need to come to you to state how did you give DSS $4 million in cash. And that is where the source of funds come in. We are trying to follow the money trail to see if persons have been using this as a front to launder money. And then they did not even keep the copies of the receipts, which again shows how blatant it was in this operation. What made it even worse is that I, as the Commissioner of Police, launched this investigation. I pinpointed what was going on. I understood police officers were involved. And then when I did that and we sent police officers, you know that I am leading this investigation and the operation. It does not end until you pass it on to me. But quite conveniently, the money is counted in an hour, released, no receipts kept, no copies made, and it is all returned without contacting the Commissioner of Police. They knew very well why they did not contact me. This was given back and released, and it was 3 hours later it was brought to my attention, and not by the police service, by the SSA. So it showed that there was deliberate intent to undermine my office and to ensure that actions were taken in a very questionable manner. These police officers, and I'll be very open on it, this is either based on blatant incompetence, or we need to analyze and ascertain whether this was a deliberate attempt to pervert the course of justice. Whichever, somebody is going to have to pay the price for this. This is totally unacceptable. And persons will try it again, which is very unfortunate, where people try to blame the Commissioner of Police. So, and you would have noticed the interesting point, when it was perceived that the two persons who were in the room putting the money in their envelope, people thought it was police officers. So if one police officer did something wrong, you'd have seen on social media by the same, the anti-Gary posse, that the commissioner should resign. When it was now discovered that it was a soldier, nobody has seen the chief of defense staff should resign. And there's no reason that he should. If one individual commits something illegally, there's such a desperation to try to have me not be in this seat so that other persons can have their illegal act. It is now very clear. And even, I just wish to clarify, with the Law Association, I appreciate their comment. I am looking at it. The only thing to rectify, they stated that the soldiers were under my command. There is a difference between soldiers and police officers. I do not have command or authority over any soldier in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. However, that, as I said, was an operation led by police. So we are going to take responsibility, which is why we have launched 3 investigations to ascertain the $22 million, as I spoke about, as well as the police officers, based on error in judgment or deliberate, by returning the cash. And the third has to do with the individuals who we saw with an envelope putting it into their pocket. I also had to get into the conversation because I thought it was taking too long. I have submitted my report, and those individuals are now being questioned by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And with that, I will now ask the head of the FIB, Mr. Jacob, to give, to further clarify.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffith. Let me say, firstly, good morning to the media and the listening and viewing public. I want to clarify a couple issues. One, which was aired recently by a couple radio talk show hosts, which seems to suggest that the police somehow fail to perform their duties in charging the person who is responsible for having the large sum of cash at the house in Lahore. Let me make it abundantly clear that the Trinidad dollar is legal tender. There's no legislation in Trinidad and Tobago which criminalizes the possession of money. None. So for someone to say that the police somehow did not perform their duties properly because the first charge that the person was supposed to have received was for being in possession of all that money. That is not so. No legislation criminalizes money. The Procedure of Crime Act is clear as to what can happen if you are in possession of a certain sum of money. The Procedure of Crime Act does not say what that sum is, but that sum is noted in a legal notice, 38 of 2011, which is the prescribed sum order, which indicates that the prescribed sum is 20,000 TT dollars. So if a person has in his possession in excess of 20,000 TT dollars, he does not commit an offense. But under Section 38 of the Procedure of Crime Act, it allows a police officer of the rank of sergeant and above, or custom officer of the rank of grade 3 and above, to seize that money under the Proceeds of Crime Act. That's where the power is. So it's not an offense. The customs and the police have the ability under the Proceeds of Crime Act to seize that money. And the seizure of that money is, as the Commissioner indicated, for an investigation to be conducted into source and derivation of that money. And that is outlined in the legislation. So anytime the police seize money, and I want to make the distinction here that there is a physical seizure and there is a seizure under the Proceeds of Crime Act, which is two different things. So you can seize an item. So the police can go on an operation and they can seize money. But that is different to the seizure under the Proceeds of Crime Act, where the prescribed sum comes into play. I trust that has been made abundantly clear, because the narrative that has gone out is that somehow the police officers would soon be entering persons' home, and once they have more than $20,000, somehow arresting them and charging them for that. That is not so. The commissioners already alluded to the fact that based on the circumstances of that operation in Larkita, several investigations have been launched by his direction, so I do not want to go into that. He has already spoken to that, but I can tell you that as it relates to all these schemes, the police service has been looking carefully at all the schemes. We have been working with our counterparts and the Office of the Attorney General, the TTSEC, that's the Securities Exchange Commission, the FIU, and other regulators to see whether or not there can be culpability grounded in legislation in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's an ongoing process. The investigation into the source and derivation of monies that are placed into these various schemes are also of concern to us and are being investigated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lucas. And again, also the Police Complaint Authority, they're also heavily involved in this investigation, because obviously I need external support. I've also, through the Minister of National Security, trying to acquire external support as well in this very serious investigation, whereby we have seen that the senior officers in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service could very well be involved in very questionable activity. And as I stated, whether you're in or out of uniform, I give the assurance, once I sit in the chair as Commissioner of Police, that no one is above the law. Whilst in the same manner, I have to ensure that your constitutional rights will not be infringed and we will not go witch hunting. I am not going to turn a blind eye to any questionable or illegal activity by anyone, especially those in uniform. As I always state, that our police officers, they come from society, and our society is certainly not perfect. But we are expected to be of a much higher standard, and I will ensure that we maintain that standard. We will never get it right, because no police service is perfect. We have situations like this around every single police service in the world. What I intend to do is to make sure that it is dealt with as quickly as possible, that we can remove such questionable elements from the service, which will build a good working relationship and trust of the public to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There's one more matter that I'd like to discuss before we open questions from media. It has to do with that of crime, dealing with the police service over the last 9 months. We have now come to the end of the third quarter of this year, and what we have achieved, I know these are the things that should usually make a front page, but you know, good news really sometimes won't sell. They will have the other items instead. Today is the first time in the history of this country that there's been 100 less murders at any time in a year in comparison to the same period last year. First ever. 100 less murders. So the people on social media that will continue to say crime is increasing and crime is getting worse, this is a deliberate attempt, because people just do not want to read good news or see good news. There's been a decrease of 20%. There's been a decrease of 20% to 25% of every major crime in this country. Violent crime, kidnapping, rape, murder, armed robberies, shootings and woundings. As it pertains to murders, as I said, it's the first time in the history of this country, 100 less murders at any time in a year in comparison to the same period last year. Now this is the interesting part, where there are persons in this country who believe in negativity, in being angry, in blaming persons, in not saying anything positive. There's going to be, I remember the last time we had this, the first Mr. Bajo spoke about is, what about the detection rate? Because, wait a minute, stating that crime was going down, that can't be good. Let me find something to be negative. And when we brought about the fact that there was a reduction in every crime, the three dailies, one was the detection rate, still is not going up fast enough. Another had gang activity is still a problem to beat. And not about the fact that there was a 20 to 25% reduction. You know why? Because we had to state gang murders are difficult to solve. and detection rate is still not going up, because the good news on the front page is what will sell. Sorry, the bad news on the front page is what will sell. So the first thing that we will see here is that the persons on social media, because we do know on social media everybody is a criminologist. So everybody now will be able to say, let me see, I have to be negative, because that is what this country is about, negativity rather than positivity. So what they will first say is, well, the reason for that is because of COVID. Now, do we have the data of the, okay. Just for information purposes, you can look at most of the major cities in North America. Since the COVID pandemic, there's been an increase in crime. And the reason there's been, and we're speaking about New York City, Boston, Detroit, LA, Baltimore, Chicago, has all increased. So it means, obviously, to all the criminologists who are writing all of these points to state that the reason why the murder rate has reduced is because of COVID, it means that the criminal elements and the murderers in North America, they missed that memo that the criminologists in Trinidad and Tobago have written to state that COVID would reduce crime. So there apparently is some memo that is supposed to be given to criminals to say that when there's COVID, you do not kill, you do not rape, you do not steal. But in contrast to that, and the reason why crime has increased, especially in North America, and you know Trinidad and Tobago, in the eyes of some, we're a state of North America, because whatever happens in North America, we try to copy it. But in this year, we don't copy, even though the statistics would show. And the fact of the matter is that when you have a situation like COVID, it will cause crime to increase, because crime is a product of opportunity. And now it is that you have a situation of a pandemic like this, it will cause health issues. Health issues can cause persons to commit crime. It can cause financial issues. It can cause persons to lose their jobs. It will cause unemployment. All of these things would cause crime to increase. It will cause persons to be frustrated, persons staying home. It has proven to be an increase for domestic violence. It will cause, again, something known as secondary crime prevention, because when it is that if you do not burn your energies in the right manner, which is sport and extracurricular activities, you stay at home, you get frustrated, you get annoyed, you commit crime. So in contrast to all of the experts out there who will try to water down this and use an excuse to say it is because of COVID, you cannot give one point or example to verify that COVID can be a cause for crime to decrease. I have just given you all the statistics from criminologists that would confirm that situations like this would cause crime to increase. I have given you data from almost every major city in North America to verify that crime has increased. So to all the would-be criminologists who would go on social media to try to water down this fact, this is not because of COVID. And in the same manner, this is not to boast and say that it is the police. It is much more than police that would have caused this. It has to do with technology. It has to do with the sign of the times. It has to do with the maturity of the public. It may even have to do, again, with persons who may be previously gang members that are now actually becoming community leaders and trying to build a community rather than to destroy it. It has because of the good working relationship with the police and the public, whereby there was a 14% national support. It went to 30%. So there are a number of different things that would have caused this to increase. I ask the public, rather than discredit this fact and to try to water this down with excuses, this is something positive for the country, that we are going in the right direction. If this continues on this trend, by the end of the year, it should be 150 less murders. So wherever you went last year, we had close to, we had almost 550. We'll be going back into the 300s. We continue that pattern. I am not stating that this country could ever get back to the days of 150 murders, because now with the easy access for drugs, illegal weapons, gang-related activity, there's something called acceptable. People will say acceptable is 0, but I am realistic. But to move from 530s to 380s, hopefully, that is a great achievement. And I wish to thank the Trinidad and Tobago public for their maturity and working with the police for us to reach where we are. I will now ask DCP Ford to elaborate on this, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. Members of the media, good morning to you all. The rest of Trinidad and Tobago, good morning to you. What we need to start with is that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service from the onset had a commitment to the execution of our vision of making every place in Trinidad and Tobago safer. We saw that with a commitment and a motivation by all 10,000 plus officers, and especially the Homicide Bureau of Investigations officers, to really knuckle down and make this place safer. We have about 4 reasons that we can ascribe to that cause us to be enjoying this success that we are enjoying. And in cricketing world, that the Commissioner will be very familiar with, when a batsman makes 100 runs, we tip, or he tips his bat to the audience. We can do a reverse, and the population, the police service, can tip your bat to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And we can say that we have done it, and we continue to do it. The 4 areas that I think are largely responsible for the success that we are seeing today would be: 1, traditional policing, scientific policing, the formation of a particular unit a little earlier this year, and the case file management. Along the lines of traditional policing, we had a system where informants, by way of you, the members of the public and other stakeholders, came forward more readily and gave information because of the confidence that we had in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We saw where IC witnesses came forward a whole lot more to give statements, to cooperate with the police, to put murderers behind bars. The increase in patrols, as you would have realized when you moved about your daily business, you saw an increase in police officers by way of divisional patrols, ERP patrols. We had partnerships with other agencies, inclusive the DPP's department, that we liaise with as we continue our investigations to make sure that we're on the right track, and we gather the necessary evidence to put the perpetrators before courts and get them behind bars. The scientific policing method that we utilize took into consideration CCTV, both national and residential, IT, digital technologies, and I really will not want to go too deep into the scientific aspect, but we also saw the launching of the app that caused persons to be reporting crimes more readily and easily. And then you had that rapid response by the police officers that gave the public that continued measure of comfort to go about its business. Clear indication of that was we saw that we had the safest carnival this year, probably in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. We came into an election period where there was expectation of, as they say, wailing and gnashing of teeth. And we did not have that. We had a police service that rose way above expectations and delivered because you, the population, partnered with us and we worked together. We saw the formation of a homicide support unit that brought about different entities from the cybercrime department, the anti-kidnapping bureau, the homicide bureau, and other scientific and traditional policing departments. So that when a homicide occurred, we had a war room where all these entities came together, analyzed the data, analyzed the information, and assisted the homicide investigation one by one, which saw a faster turnover of investigations and faster clearance rate. And that dovetailed nicely into effective and efficient case management. Because of the attachment of the legal department, in collaboration with the DPP department, we were able to analyze and review files, saw the gaps, filled those gaps, and had files flowing through the system faster. So they got to the DPP department, got to court, and so we were able to present our cases. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to assure all of you that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service continues in that trust to achieve our vision of making Trinidad and Tobago a safer place. And these 4 that I've identified are just 4. You may be able to touch on some others. But with the mix of traditional policing, scientific policing, the formation of that specialized homicide support unit, and the effective and efficient management of case files, we were able to see this great reduction. Beside the Commissioner and the rest of you, I look forward to 150 plus homicides less at the end of this year. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. And before we just open questions to the media, I will just like to announce the Officer of the Week. On August the 17th, PC, in fact, what I'm going to do for persons, you could read it. Today is the last day after for DCP Ford in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. He has served the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for, what, 90 how much years? Yes, even before that. I wish to send all my best to DCP Ford. He has proven to be what you would call an exceptional police officer, serving above and beyond the call of duty. I wish him well in his future endeavors. I may see him in another avenue very soon, hopefully. And with this, I would let's ask DCP Ford to do the kind work to announce the Police Officers of the Week.
Thank you very much, sir. And this is the information here, right? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, on August the 17th this year, 2020, Constables Nicholas Slater and WPC Susan Soraya Jeffers of the Northeastern Division were on patrol when they were alerted that a robbery was in progress at the Digicel store in the Kweze San Juan. Both officers entered the store and caught the lone and armed bandit in the process of robbing the attendants of that store. The lone bandit was arrested with an imitation firearm, which obviously the police officers did not know that it was an imitation firearm, and taken into custody. Nothing was taken from the Digicel store and no one was harmed. It was later learned that the bandit had recently been released from prison after 17 years and who had reported on Beyond the Tape that he had changed from a life of crime. Well, in this case, crime did not pay, and clearly he did not change from a life of crime. Today, on behalf of the Executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we wish to reward these two officers for what they did in catching a correct criminal, dedication to duty, and going beyond the call of duty.
Okay, thank you, DCP Ford. And before open questions in media, I'd just like to make a statement. How do I go with this one? Okay. There were discussions held between the Minister of National Security and myself, as well as the Police Service Commissioner and myself over the last 24 hours. Because of the present situation that is ongoing as it pertains to a very serious investigation that may involve senior officers in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, it may be not the right time for me to go on vacation. So based on that, this may not be the appropriate time because of the serious nature of this investigation as well as other matters that may require my attention. After having discussions with the Minister of National Security and the Police Service Commission, I would not be going on leave tomorrow, and I will be back in office until further notice. Questions to the media.
Good day, Commissioner. Jens Lavin with the Newsday. Let me start off with your vacation. I apologize that you have to work so hard for so long. Let's start off with DSS. Now, you continuously say that the officers involved are members of the regiment, the soldiers that were involved in stuffing the envelope in his clothing. Let us start off with the uniform. The uniform worn on that day, how can the public differentiate between Ttps and soldiers?
Very good question, and it is something that we have to address. Now, what happens, for example, the British, in the British armies, they have several different regiments. Each regiment, the Scots Guards, the Highland Fusiliers, the Grenadier Guards, they will all have a different uniform. But if they go into an operation, they will all have to wear the same uniform for uniform purposes. For obvious reasons. You're not going to have different regiments go into an operation with several different uniforms. That can cause confusion. In this situation, however, we have seen what has happened. And it means that there must be some degree to make it clear as to who is police and who's thief, or who's police and who's soldier. So with that, we need to clarify that. So it is something that has to be addressed. I agree with you. One of the concerns that I do have is that the perception when people are trying to align SORT, the Special Operation Response Team has proven to be a powerful tool that has assisted greatly in pegging back criminal elements. And there's a reason why there's a target towards SORT. I'm not speaking about the situation, but SORT, you'd have seen from the rescuing of numerous persons who were kidnapped, the major raids that have taken place, weapons seized, criminal elements apprehended, drug busts, and that will include inclusive of West Moorings, Cascade, Goodwood Park, Federation Park, Valsane, Chaguanas. All of these places have all been SORT-led. So SORT will go where very few people would go. They're going to be the front line, and the reason why they've been so successful in their operations is that every single member of the Special Operation Response Team is polygraphed on a regular basis. So I polygraph my SORT officers to make sure, because you could bring people in, and then after several months they may change on their principle or whatever because of financial concerns or whatever, because crime is a product of opportunity. So we do constant polygraph testing of SORT officers to ensure that they remain in that unit. We do have support systems and support units that will accompany SORT based on the operation, inclusive of members of the Defense Force. Maybe that type of polygraph testing should be done, make it mandatory for Defense Force officers. I'm not stating that would have prevented this from happening, but we need to put mechanisms to prevent it in future. And likewise with the uniform, it is something that I would speak to the Minister of National Security to ensure that we do not have that issue. But again, to clarify, the Special Operation Response Team are only police officers, and they are not members of the Defense Force. The Defense Force, they provide a support unit to accompany SORT. This has been going on even when I was in the Defense Force, where we will accompany police officers on operations. But in those days, the soldiers would have only worn green camouflage. Because of counter-revolutionary warfare, because of urban training, that type of uniform has now changed. And you would have seen it even with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
How many soldiers are attached to, well, not attached, but work alongside SORT?
It would be inappropriate for me to give details as it pertains to an organization outside of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. That question should be assigned to the Minister of National Security or the Chief of Defense Staff.
Okay then. How many times in the past has soldiers been part of police-led operation involving SORT?
Well, as it pertains to operations, numerous and hundreds of occasions. We have what is known as the Interagency Task Force. The Interagency Task Force will comprise
sorry.
I know, I'm coming to this. I'm just want to show you the pattern. This has been the norm for decades, where you have joint operations through the concept of the Interagency Task Force with officers from the task force working alongside police officers. So as it pertains to the Special Operation Response Team, similar manner. The Defense Force persons, they have been assigned at Pamutu and they work alongside their company SWAT at times based on the situation. I saw clear and present danger when it was brought to my attention because people ask why SWAT for an operation like this. If you have $22 million cash in your home, you're certainly not just going to have a pumpek out of your garden. We do not know what we were going to encounter, especially when I got the intelligence to verify that there were police officers who provided some degree of protection for the situation. That is why SWAT went in there and they asked the Defense Force to accompany them for backup.
How many members of SWAT are ex-soldiers, and how can we differentiate between the SWAT members who are ex-soldiers and soldiers at the side working with all?
Well, the fact of the matter is that they are SWAT members are all, and this is the 37th time that I'm saying it, I don't even hear again, all SWAT officers are police officers, whether they were selling insurance before they became police officers, whether they were ex-soldiers, they are serving police officers. This is the 38th time, let me say it again. All members of the Special Operation Response Team are serving police officers. Whatever job they did in the past has nothing to do with what they are in the present. They are police officers. The members of the Defense Force are not members of SWAT. They are not police officers.
And lastly, with regards to SWAT and soldiers, with regards to remuneration for those soldiers who are working with SWAT, does it come out of the Ttps budget or Defense Force?
I cannot believe you asked that question. So why would the police pay members of the Defense Force? For the 39th time, if you're a member of the Defense Force, you will be paid by Defense Force and you work with the Defense Force and not under the command of the Commissioner of Police. You'll be under the command of the Defense Force. Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force comprise soldiers, sailors, members of the Air Guard and the reserves. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are separate and apart from the Defense Force. So there's nothing like, we do not pay them, I do not give them commands, I don't have authorization to direct them in any role and function.
No, I'm not sure if you or Mr. Lucas could answer this. You said that, I read an article today that's saying that there was no report of money being missing from DSS, and therefore there is no crime because there is no victim. If that be the case, why is there an investigation into that? If there is no victim, there is no crime, therefore there is no need for investigation.
I could answer that, or if you want to include after. If it is that you see, you do not have, it's not necessarily that there must be a victim to ascertain if a crime took place. In a situation like this, obviously we would need a report by someone to say that they missed X amount to then after link that person to the possible crime. But we have commenced investigations, persons are being questioned, and I think very shortly we would actually get a report. If it is that there is no report, and if someone decides to say, well, listen, nothing was stolen from me, it is very difficult, even if it is that you have video footage. But I am not going to wait until I get a report. This is a matter that had national prominence. So because of it, we have brought in these individuals, because once you are part of a police operation and we something looking very questionable, I am not going to wait for a report to take place for me to commence immediate investigation. So it is proactivity, concurrent activity. We expect that there would be a report made of certain funds that could be missing. If not, it will totally change the ball game. Until then, we are doing our job.
Vivian Bowen, Caribbean Lifestyle Communication. Well, you're not going on vacation to cover most of my questions, so I still have three though. I heard the mother of Rishma say that the daughter's attacker knew officers at the Pinal police station. I think she said he may have had relatives there. Can you give any indication that this is true or not? And that this have affected the interference or lack of interference in the situation?
Sure. Again, we looked at all the reports. There was never a request for a protection order, so there was never a restraining order. We never got any reports pertaining to domestic violence. Any member of the family who would state that they knew that they submitted any report to the police, I asked if they can please contact me directly. Let me get a copy of that receipt. I can then use that receipt from that statement that you made to be able to link to the police officer who received that. But I'm not seeing a receipt. So it means that, again, that when we have these things, we get all of these claims, and whether the claims are accurate or not, I need to deal with it. So I'm not here to defend the police service. If it is that that did take place, I will immediately deal with those officers. But as I stated, we have, speaking about the man being a relative or whatever, I can't act on that because we have no information. So if people make this accusation, if they can state who is the police officer, and if it is that they see that there's a relationship, if they could show that there was something that was done to prevent the police from performing their duty, I would act immediately on it. But as I stated, we have no report of anything made in this matter pertaining to domestic violence. The only report we had, it involved both individuals. They made a report to the station almost at the same time. The police spoke to both of them. They were warned, and there's no report by the victim as it pertained to domestic violence. We have no report from any family member as it pertained to domestic violence. We do have one report, however, of a restraining, of a demand for a protection order, but it was not on the victim.
Okay, second question. What type of internal programs do you have set up for domestic violence within the Ttps? I mean, considering that domestic violence, it have no boundaries in Trinidad and Tobago, in the sense of, victims could come in and, victims of police officers could come in and, report, and what kind of programs you have set up where police officers can get, seek assistance then?
I think you're the only person in the media that does know about the gender-based violence unit being formed, the only person in the country that does know about it. You are the only person, so I will come and speak to you because I realize you ask a lot of questions and you never know what's going on. So, and you do, you really need to do research, sir. The gender-based violence unit was formed several months ago. It was launched here. We spoke about the officers being specifically trained by members of New York City, where we have specific training to have the officers trained and prepared to understand the degree of confidentiality, making sure that you have that information in confidence. We will be able to enforce the restraining orders, and then all of this. So this unit deals specifically with the training of these officers to deal with domestic violence.
And with all respect, that is not really what I asked.
But you did.
Within the 4 police officers within, because police service also have domestic violence. So I'd like to know if you have anything in particular where relatives can come and report on an officer or officers can get.
So for the 23rd time, the gender-based violence unit. Right. I just said that.
Similar as the rest of the population. Okay, good. Last question. Wow. The last question. Would you support a policy regarding monitoring bracelets for COVID-19 patients on home quarantine if it can help in the efficiency of manpower within the police service?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it would be inappropriate for me to give my views as it pertains to planned government policies. When I make these comments, it will put pressure on the government, and suppose the government does not agree to it. So I do not ever give comments as it pertains to government policies or planned government policies. What I can say, however, is as it pertains to law, it is going to be difficult for a law to demand that someone pass that on them, especially if it is that they're not seen as a criminal or someone who may have committed a crime. What we are doing is similar to the United Kingdom. There are 1,500 plus persons who are positive with COVID-19 and they are under house quarantine. We need to ensure as much as possible that they stay indoors. One individual who does not adhere to it and he goes to the supermarket, he goes to the mall, that can spread. I think that is what the biggest concern. When these persons, they are under home quarantine, it is not the fact of just remaining at home and making sure others do not enter your home. And if that is not done, all of the things that we're doing can fall apart, which is why, as the Commissioner of Police, I have liaised with the relevant ACP in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with the Ministry of Health for us to keep getting the database of persons who are in house quarantine. And what we are doing now is doing a regular check as much as possible, because if persons leave their home, they would have now breached the public health regulations based on what they have done, and we can take action.
Commissioner, good morning. Table, good morning. Darren Baho, Newsday. Commissioner, is this the darkest day of the police service where you have, one, a cabal in the police service working against you? You have paid assassins working on social media against you. You have people in the defense force involved in crime with criminal gangs. You have people higher up as possibly the executive of the police service working to destroy you. You have to put off your vacation to spend time with your family. When is the right time you will ever get to go spend time with your family if you have all these elements working against you? And what assurance can you give to the public that one day the police service will actually protect and serve with pride?
Sure. Very powerful statements there, Mr. Barrow. So, yes, it was pretty difficult. I had to be rushing off this morning, cancelling flights to Barbados, cancelling flights to London, to Belfast, everything. And I'm actually doing a COVID test for no reason at all. So it is not about me. It will be the darkest day of Gary Griffith. It is that this is what I swore an oath for. And obviously it will take a toll on my health, it will take a toll on my family. But the way I was brought up, the way I was trained, my country comes first. And if this is a time that it is not, for the last 2 years, every single week there's been some reason. I think in this situation, this is obviously a reason. We have intelligence that there was a deliberate plan as well, that in my absence, persons will try to make use of this period to try to undermine the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I am fighting a battle here with many Trojan horses in my own camp, and that is a fact. What I ask the public to do now is not the time for you to throw the whole police service not under the bus, but to try to discard and discredit the whole Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. If we have 8,000 police officers and even say 100 are involved in this, I beg you, please understand, you have several thousand officers out there who are working hard from local government election, Christmas, Carnival, COVID, plan to loot and burn the city, general election. They are out there doing all that they can. Many of them have actually been affected through COVID because of serving this country. Let us not discredit the police officers because of the situation. I ask the country to look at it, see the glass half full. In other times, I was actually advised, whispered to by many, you see that 22 million, so leave that alone, let that die. Because the police officers said they checked the receipts, case closed. And I could have done that, and this would have been the end of that. That is not the way I was cut. It was obvious something went wrong. It was obvious there was some degree of police incompetence or criminal activity. I will not bury it. By me exposing it, it has obviously affected the image of the police service. But that is what transparency is about. I'm here to be transparent and to be honest and to be a patriot in my country. So I have to open this Pandora's box. And if by chance this investigation could be one that we can drill so hard to extract all of the major criminal elements in the police service and the defense force, I see the glass half full. I see this now as being an opportunity to clean out the police service much more than I have been doing. Yes, in my 2 years I have been able to have 80 police officers suspended, 60 police officers charged for criminal activity, and over 20 I want to fire. So again, I said, every 5 days since I've been commissioner of police, a police officer has been suspended, charged, or requested to be terminated. But probably I need to do more. I intend to do more. We will clean up the police service. By the results, I don't see the darkest day in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I see this as one of the brightest days because the police officers have made 100 less murders this year than last year. So I see the positives in it. Obviously, it is nothing that we should be proud about by what we have seen with police officers. We have intelligence and investigations monitoring what is going on, and it is amazing. There have been several occasions where I have led this investigation, and persons have blocked, they have misdirected. So there have been many situations where they have operated in a way to try to prevent me from dealing with this matter. I give the assurance to the public that I will do all that I can to bring the persons to justice in or out of uniform.
Commissioner, on that same topic, in many instances where police officers are accused of wrongdoing, one of the first instances would be to remove them from possibly interfering with the investigation. In this particular case, how many police officers have been transferred from the Northern Division, particularly the La Hokita Police Station, those who probably would have been working in police admin, those who probably working in different intelligence units in the police service who may be involved in this whole alleged criminal scheme? And has there been recommendations to the Chief of Defense Staff that some of his officers are also compromised? And
I'll ask Mr. Ford.
Right, and we're in the process of removing some of those officers, obviously, so that, just as you said, they will not interfere with the investigations. As it relates to the Chief of Defense Staff, that is something that the Commissioner will have to deal with, to speak with the Chief of Defense Staff. But just with all the investigations that we are doing, whether it be the Chief of Defense Staff or within Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, persons have not been charged as yet, but where the need arises to remove them, not to interfere, certainly we will take that course of action. Make no bones about that.
Yeah. May I add, this becomes a perfect opportunity for me to bring one of my recommendations. One of the concerns I saw when I came into the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, everyone wants to be polygraphed, wants to be drug tested to become a recruit. They're willing to do all that is required. When you get into the police service, after that, all police officers are attorneys in their own form and fashion. And if I transfer somebody from St. James to Diego Martin, they will take me to court. They will take me to court if it is that, why it is you transfer me, why it is you're taking away the extra, when I was getting $50,000 a month in overtime, why it is that I'm not being promoted. The problem lies here is that when they get into the system and then we have intelligence to verify police officers being involved in the drug trade, being involved in controlling drug blocks. I have intelligence, but I do not have evidence to take action. So when I have the evidence is when it is I can charge 80 of them or suspend them based on disciplinary actions. But when we have intelligence, and I do have intelligence for a number of police officers, but I don't have enough evidence to take action to have them suspended or dismissed or to be arrested. I am looking at drafting a policy whereby with immediate effect, I can't do it with the present officers, but I can clean up the system in the future. And it happens with police services around the world. Jamaica has it, where every 5 years you need to be recontracted. It gives the police that opportunity that if we know you're a bad egg, we have intelligence, we have enough that we know what it is you're doing wrong, we will not renew your contract. Now this is something I know the Welfare Association would object to, because they want to make sure that there's tenure for persons when they're in. But I need to clean up the police service, and this is an ideal opportunity to do so. Every 5 years you're polygraph tested, and you sign that in your contract as a recruit. Now, persons would be, any police officer who would object to this, you should not be in the police service. Because the fact is, when you did it as a recruit, why not after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? You should be willing, when you swore that oath to office, when it says that you were willing to be polygraphed and drug tested to get in, it means that you should be prepared to do that throughout your police career. Anytime any police officer is reluctant to do that, you need to check yourself, because now you have lost track with what you swore an oath for to this country. So I'm looking through the legal department and through the Attorney General if the next batch of recruits can start doing that. Because what I'm doing now, whereas before it was 100 recruits training in every batch, I've now moved it up to 200, and eventually it will get to 300 in the next batch, which means that that's 600. Within 5 years, we'll have 3,000 new police officers. That'll be probably half of the police officers. But now we'll have police officers who we have checks and balances where we can measure their performance, make them accountable, and if they are rogue elements, we can weed them out.
So I just want to come back to what my colleague raised with the raid in La Hoquita. Much of it has been leaked on social media through videos within the home of the suspect or the person of interest. In one of those videos, it depicted what appears to be acts of violence being carried out by the raiding party on unarmed citizens. And in one instance, an allegation that a woman had a miscarriage, which is truly unfortunate if it did occur. Has there been an investigation into that, and why was it necessary to be striking unarmed citizens who appear not to be putting up any resistance?
Well, obviously there would be no justification for that. Having said that, just as we are waiting on the owner to make a report of funds being missing so that we can take the relevant action on the persons from the Defense Force, if that is what actually took place. In this same situation, we have not yet received, and I can be corrected, but we have not yet received any report from anyone claiming that they were attacked by police officers. Having said that, however, in the same manner when Jensen asked the question that, well, if it is nobody made a report about money being stolen, why are we investigating this matter? It does matter. In this same situation, if we have video footage is admissible as evidence. And with that, I have already contacted the Police Complaint Authority. They are working hand in hand with me on, we have our investigation through the PSB. They are doing their investigation as it pertains to the police officers who would have given back the 22 million with a handshake, gift wrapping it back to the individuals. And also this situation with the video footage to verify if police officers abused their authority through excessive use of force by these persons. But we have, as I said, however, up at this time, we have no report by anyone stating that they were abused, that they were hit, or that any person had a miscarriage.
So I just want to go back to another matter which would have raised following the Bayside Towers incident. And there was a difference of opinion between yourself and Chief of the National Security. Since then, how has your relationship improved with him? And where has the Peacock investigation reached?
Where is it? The
Peacock, missing Peacock, the Prime Minister's Peacock.
Oh, Peacock. So you say teacup. Okay. Quoting from the Prime Minister himself, this is a good time for me to get into this conversation. I have a very strong degree of passion to serve my country and the citizens of this country, as well as the police officers. And on that occasion, based on how the media perceived what the Prime Minister said, as you would have seen on the front pages, it gave the impression that the Prime Minister pulled up Gary, that the police officers are not doing our job, we are profiling persons. And again, for me to get into the conversation, let me clarify once and for all. Trinidad and Tobago is not a state of the United States. Many people feel so. So when they see what happens in the United States, they feel that we are an arm of the United States. So we have this situation of police violence and abuse and only targeting one group. I actually did a check of my 8,000 police officers, and none of us are white. So the first thing is, let's clarify this. No police officer goes out of their way to target any certain group and leave any other group. We have nothing to gain by this. I myself actually arrested and charged my own family member in West Morings a few months ago. So no one is above the law. However, going back to the situation, there was this perception that the police were not doing what it is we could. My strong degree of making sure that I serve my country and the citizens, but as well as looking after the well-being of police officers, it gave the impression that if it is we were doing the wrong thing, that could have affected public confidence and trust with the public and the police service, and that I had to ensure was not done. By doing that, because of the 14 to 30% increases, what has a big part to play with the reduction in murders. So if there's the perception that police were only targeting certain persons, I took that hurt because I knew it was not true. But that is what the perception that the media had based on what the Prime Minister had stated. Likewise, there's the perception that people, if you were partying, we could have arrested you. I have, again, with my oath to office, I have to make sure that the constitutional rights of citizens will not be infringed. So the perception that the media was putting out, based on what they thought that the Prime Minister said, gave the impression that the police now, we have the authority to go into private property, we can arrest persons if they are partying, which was not the case. I have to be very clear, because one police officer, he gets misinformation from how the media plastered it, and that police officer would have gone into any one of your homes where you had 6 persons and would have arrested all of you all. So I was very passionate about it. I want to clarify something, however, is that even though I have noted and learned that my passion to do the right thing, the love for my country, fighting for constitutional rights, all that is well and good. And even though what I said was accurate, it was in no way appropriate for me to make such a comment that could allude to the comments I made up to the Prime Minister. Since then, I have written officially to the Honorable Prime Minister, and I have apologized, and I wish to take this openly to let the public know I do apologize for the comments that I made. You know what, something that people forget is that Gary Griffith is human, and he can make mistakes. But it means that every single day that I am being monitored, scrutinized, and at times somebody can be frustrated, they can be tired. My strong degree of passion, and people said that sometimes because of my strong degree of passion to help, it puts me in situations to get me in trouble. When this started in April, and I made that press release to state that do not feel that if you're in private property, we cannot do anything, I could have sat back and said nothing, and people would have abused it. What I said then worked for 4 or 5 months. Nobody abused their system in private property. If what I did and said saved lives, well, then I have no regrets for what I did. But I did not lie. What I said was straightforward, that you cannot, even though we cannot arrest you or charge you, we can take action, we can warn, disperse, which is what we did in Bayside. No different. We can have roadblocks outside. Same situation here with this DSS. People said, keep away from this. I can't. That's not the way it was cut. And by me doing that gets me in situations of conflict and personal and be criticized because I step on toes. So again, just to clarify this matter, even though what I said was required, because I wanted to let the country know and the police officers that I cannot infringe on your constitutional rights, we cannot go into private property. If you're a party and it is not against the law. But even though what I said was the correct thing, how you speak is even more important. Because even though the message was accurate, how the message went about became lost because of how I spoke and how I said it. So it was, again, because of my strong degree of passion. That is no excuse. It was totally unacceptable. I apologize to the country for the comments that I made. I wrote officially to the Honorable Prime Minister. And just by the way, I was not asked to send any letter of apology. Nobody insisted and directed me to apologize. That is how I was trained. If it is I am wrong, I am wrong. I give the assurance, however, I am still going to be very, very strong in ensuring constitutional rights will not be infringed. But I need to understand that my role and function, as I said, I am human. And at times, I tell you, Darren, you try doing a colonoscopy and told about your gallbladder and then be frustrated with every single thing coming down on you. Sometimes you could get a little frustrated to a point. So again, I do apologize to the country for my actions, and I did apologize officially to the Prime Minister. And I will actually hand that over to DCP Ford.
Repeat your question, please. Okay.
Okay, let me make it easy. If there's such a report, it would be inappropriate for me to give an update to the public on a personal report given by any citizen to the police on a matter that is being investigated by the police as it pertains to someone losing their property. So this is a private matter, and it would be inappropriate for the police to make any public statement. How was that? Any other questions?
Again, Mr. Griffith, sorry, Alexander Roosevelt from Trinidad Express. First of all, Mr. Ford, I just want to say before I start, thank you for your service. And Mr. Griffith made an allusion that we may see you soon, and I hope that's the case. Mr. Griffith, I know you had to cancel your vacation, and you wanted to, you said you wanted to do it as soon as possible. So let me extend condolences on that as well. But you did also make mention earlier that you've spoken on the DSS issue 38 times, so I'm craving indulgence for 39. We have information on, the first things first, I wanted to clarify an issue. And the police have been saying that there are 20 million, and even today's press briefing, you have made mention of 22 million. But you have also on talk shows made mention that there may be more, and you have information that there is more. So I just wanted to get a clarification on if that information has become solid. Do you have an actual estimate prior to the information given before? And what is that value? That's
sure.
First.
Okay, let me take it one by one. Yeah, and that is the point. The police officers never have counted 22,157,000 in a few hours. That is impossible. So they have, all that we are speaking about, 22,157,000, it's what they put in the station diary. There's nothing for me to verify that what they stated is accurate. I think it is virtually impossible for us to say that it is accurate because you cannot count 22 million. You need the machine, you need to check and make sure it is not counterfeit. So all of that, we are calling a number based on what one police officer put in a station diary. He could have placed 6, he could have put 6, he could have put 122. And therein lies my problem. He had no right to have just immediately sent back that without contacting the FIB, and not just him, it's a few other officers to verify. So we are using a number based on what they placed in the station diary. And that doesn't mean that what was there was actually 22 million. It could be 92 million, it could be 10 million. We do not know.
Okay. Secondly, I'm not sure if the information will be sensitive or not, but you have made mention that the individuals involved who have been questioned are soldiers. And Jensen made mention of it, and you responded earlier that the soldiers were involved in the operation were wearing similar uniforms to everyone who was there. So my question was, how were these individuals identified as being members of the defense force?
Right. Immediately when it was brought to my attention on that Sunday morning, I contacted both the head of the Special Operation Response Team and the head of the soldiers in Kamuto who work with the Special Operation Response Team from the Defense Force. And both of them confirmed the names of the two individuals and they confirmed that they were soldiers from the Defense Force, both of them. And so with that, I realized that there was a delay in trying to get this investigation completed. So I submitted my report verifying that these were it was confirmed by both the head of SWAT and the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force of the soldiers who work with SWAT and who accompanied them that day.
Additionally, we received information that 4 soldiers were taken in for questioning yesterday. My question is there any updates on that? Have they been detained or are they still in?
I don't know. Up until 3 p.m., they were being questioned. We're trying to get all the information because they are given a certain angle on something. Obviously, I wouldn't want to divulge what their comments would be, as interesting as it is. But I think we are waiting on the report from the owner before we take further action and make any further comment.
Okay, no problem. And just for clarity's sake, again, touching on Jensen's question earlier, the uniforms that were worn that day during the operation, since they seemed to be in tandem, are those SWAT uniform, TTP? Who owns the uniform? Who
SWAT,
provides?
Special
SWAT.
Operation Response Team. What I picked up is that most of the SWAT officers would have the vest on with police on it. The Defense Force personnel, they did not. But again, I still have to clarify. I'm not going to get into I was told that there's some difference. I do not know what it is, but those uniforms used by the Special Operation Response Team, I can only account for what is worn by my officers under my command. I can't account or to justify or to clarify what is worn by soldiers. I can't.
Commissioner, as a former senior Defense Force member, is it against any form of Army policy, regiment policy, for members to engage in activities such as DSS?
You mean in the operation or being involved in the finances?
In the finance, running an operation like
no,
DSS.
again, there's a lot I can say, but I have to be so careful. I've been in the Army, I've been in politics, I'm a police officer. I have to be clear, not to, because of what I was in the past. I can't speak about politics, about laws, or the Defense Force. I will ask that you speak to the Chief of Defense Staff that would be able to give you enough information. I can speak for the police service. If you recall, the police service officers, looking at the Hackshaw matter, for example, police officers, before you have any degree of employment or remuneration in any other form or fashion, you must come to the Commissioner of Police to get permission. So I can speak for us. Any police officer who is involved in any type of business transaction, you must have the approval from the Commissioner of Police before you get involved in any business where it is you have financial gain. And that's for obvious reasons, to make sure that no police officer is involved in something that can be competitive or clashing with the role and function of the police service, or that you're involved in something that can be linked to illegal activity. The Defense Force, all I can say is there's something just on par with that.
Mr. Lucas, one question for you. I may have a follow-up depending on the answer. How many schemes outside of DSS is the FIB looking at right now?
Sir, as you already know, there are several of them. As I indicated earlier on, the FIB is working with the other stakeholders, and I can tell you that just yesterday at our National Anti-Money Laundering and Combating the Financing of Terrorism meeting, NAMLAC, it came up as part of the discussion as well, because it's now not only a police issue, it's a national issue, so we have all the regulators and the stakeholders working on all these schemes, whatever they may be, Blessing Circle, DSS, Flowers, whatever they are, we are looking at them to see whether we can rigorously pursue them in whatever legislation that we have available to us in Trinidad. No, I can't give you any definitive number.
Yes.
find out where has that matter reached since he's been served with notice of the charges,
Sure.
disciplinary charges, and what obstacles have you faced in terms of moving forward? And there's just one tiny follow-up question. I mean, under the cybercrime offenses in Trinidad, you are saying that there's someone being paid to tarnish your character. Is the police investigating that individual?
No, it's not a crime. It is not a crime. Only if it is that there's something that pertains to a crime. Remember, the biggest part of social media in this country is just to discredit everyone, any organization, every politician, anybody who holds any office of authority. 90% of the comments made in social media is to criticize and to discredit. When there's something that is good, like we put up 100 less murders, I challenge you, go on the Ttps page, and there's something called the "but what about" posse. Anytime something is so good and they can't discredit it, they will put "but what about" something else. Because they can't, just not to say, well done, good job, thank God, we're moving forward. This is easy, "but what about" posse. Always look, they will say, "but what about so-and-so, but what about so-and-so." That is what they always do. So as it pertains to persons, they are free to discredit me, because my job is to secure the country and to make people safe. Their job is to try to attack me. It says a lot about their ethics. It says a lot about their character, because every time they're good in anything, there's going to be evil. And there are evil people out there. I will ask us just to ignore them and we just focus on trying to make this a better country. As it pertains to the Mr. Hackshaw matter, again, I have to work on due process. So even though I have 2 investigations ongoing as it pertains to with the DSS of the soldiers who with the envelope in their pocket, it's been investigated until there's due process. I will not take action. Same thing with the police officers, whether it is incompetence or perverting the course of justice, we would find out. In this situation, Mr. Hackshaw, up until 6 weeks ago, there was no report that came to me, which is why I could not act. I cannot act based on a newspaper report or based on emotion. When the PCA submitted the first document, based on the document, the first thing that came out is that they recommended that disciplinary action could be taken, not based on any criminal offense, but because of the fact that he would be working without permission by the Commissioner of Police on his vacation time. That is being dealt with. 2 weeks ago, the PCA then submitted further correspondence to state that there's enough evidence that they see here that can make us now look towards a criminal investigation. I immediately appointed an inspector who is working with the DPP to ascertain if there's enough to verify for that of a criminal offense. Going back now to the first one pertaining to the disciplinary action, I did say that I said it is going to be very difficult because he is the most senior police officer in the police service other than myself. However, because of that, what has happened is that I submitted the warning notice to him, and I continue to go through the process. If it is that there are going to be obstacles, hopefully by the time before we reach that obstacle, it will be rectified. I have appointed DCP James to lead the tribunal for to go through that process pertaining to disciplinary proceedings for Mr. Hackshaw. The one hiccup that I would be getting with Mr. Hackshaw is that as he is still on sick leave, it is going to be difficult for us to take disciplinary action because we have to meet him, we have to ask him questions, and since then he has not returned to duty. As soon as he returns to duty, we now have I have now appointed DCP James, even though DCP James technically is junior to Mr. Hackshaw. I have looked at different recommendations from different persons, and I am pursuing it as much as I can. So I have done all that I can. I have appointed a DCP. He is a Deputy Commissioner of Police. Even though he's acting and he holds a junior rank to Mr. Hackshaw, it is very untidy. The good news, again, I see things half full, is that very soon that I think that we are going to start the process very soon towards the appointment of substantive DCPs. So that would eliminate any situation like that in the near future. Yeah. And there, now the role and function of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force is an aid to civil power, ceremonial duty, external duty, support the police and operations. So what usually happens is that if there's an operation, members of the defense force need to be specifically trained to understand their role and function and not to abuse it. Defense so that the IATF, for example, the IATF for years and still ongoing for over a decade now, under SORT, not S-O-R-T, S-A-U-T-T, you had defense force members with the police. This has always taken place. But the senior police officer cannot give direct, he's not under the command, the soldiers are not under the command of the person. Under operation, it can work. But when it comes to defense force personnel cannot arrest. They must understand their powers, their procedures, they cannot use, so they will have their role and function. So they're there to provide a support element. When you have joint patrols around the country, you'll have the two, if you recall the incident with the homeless individual, where the two soldiers were in the back. The soldier pointed the weapon at the homeless guy. The other soldier placed the alcohol at the homeless guy and forced him to drink it. But what they had on the front page was police abuse of force because the police officers were in front. Those police officers had a right to have arrested those soldiers for doing that and not just saying nothing. So it means that there's a degree of understanding, but when it comes to situations like this, the senior personnel in the defense force would direct them to work in tandem with the senior person of the police service, because the police will lead these operations. So the defense force just provides that support element. My personal view matters like this. The defense force should not be engaged in confrontation, because when they engage in, they do not have the powers of arrest, and sometimes that would cause many legal concerns. So they have to be very careful to provide that rare echelon security rather than to be heavy in confrontation with members of the public.
Okay, we want to thank you very much, members of the media. We want to thank the Commissioner for media briefing. We also want to say a special thank you to Deputy Commissioner Ford. Sir, thank you very much for your human service throughout the years, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Mr. Wendell Lucas, head of the FIE. We now have a special presentation. We have Mr. Balram Maraj, the head of the Supermarket Association, who's going to make a special presentation to the Commissioner of Police.
With it? Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Gifford, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good morning and welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today to make a donation of 300 balls to a competition that your commissioner has started. While sitting there, if I should elaborate, and I know the gentleman we are speaking, and sometimes I'm addressing the public. Here it is, we have a commissioner who is qualified, highly trained, as he said, as a soldier, experienced as a politician, and he was quoting the laws, and my presence there as an experienced senior superintendent going up from the corporal right back up. So congratulations, sir, and also congratulations for your social work and to avoid young children from getting in a life of crime. As we are all aware that Trinidad and Tobago Football Association was suspended from the Bureau of FIFA Council due to the violation of their policies, and the matter is still in the courts right now. As a person here who played football for 60 years ago, I am concerned how this will affect the young people involved in football, more so those who have intention to represent Trinidad and Tobago. And I can remember a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Gary Griffith started a football competition to encourage the youths to get involved. I decided to speak to him and offer him these 300 balls for that project. And I told him, if we give 300 balls to 300 teams, we now have 3,000 youths will not get involved in any life of crime, and they will continue their football as usual. Getting people to change is like asking the Vatican to change a court matter, which have churches in Trinidad. Let us all pray for that matter to be settled and relations return to normalcy. Finally, I'm asking all citizens to support this youth event and ensure football continues alive and kicking. Thank you, and God bless all of us.